We're going to get started. It is 5:30. Good afternoon, or I guess it's evening now, right, everyone? I am Autumn Neighbors, the Director of Curriculum Instruction. I'm joined here by Josh Behrman, who is our Instructional Specialist for K-12 Science. And we are here to have our second night of our community curriculum conversations around our curriculum adoption process for K-12 Science. Please note that English and Spanish interpretation is available during this, and this will be recorded and posted on our website. Our goal for tonight is to review the top curricula that's been part of an RFP process for the K-12 Science curriculum adoption. This will provide an opportunity to have some curriculum conversations. Though you'll be hearing some from our vendors that are the finalists, there'll be opportunities through all the presentations to both unmute and ask some questions, but to put your questions in the chat too, and we'll be monitoring that throughout the evening. And we'll also, as part of this evening, share with you opportunities to provide your feedback to us so we can be sure that we're collecting feedback from our staff, our parents, our community members, and our students. So for our agenda, we just have a quick opening here just to give the context of our process. And then we will have our four vendors that are the finalists for the K-12 adoption. Please note, they start that the first ones are either K-8 or K-12, and then the very last one is 9-12. And these are based on the evaluations through our RFP process, how these were selected. And we'll close tonight with a Q&A. So any questions that have not been answered throughout the night, we'll have an opportunity with the vendors or with the RPS staff to ask questions and answer those. So we do want to share briefly what the process is. So the Code of Virginia states that we have an adoption process, and through that process, we can choose textbooks that are on the state published list, or we may use textbooks not approved by the state list, but in accordance to the regulations by the board, and that we'll follow that process. And when we say textbooks, we really mean any sort of print or electronic media. And Josh will talk a little bit about what that means for what does really this mean. It's not textbooks anymore, but what does curriculum mean? Another important process, as the state creates a list of textbooks or curriculum for their statewide list, our process must be similar. And you're going to see throughout our process and even the feedback that we're soliciting from our families, our teachers, our students, the questions are similar to what is used at the state level. In addition, we've reviewed through the evaluation process the correlation with the standards of learning, and you'll hear as part of the presentation the alignment to the standards. Finally, not only is this part of the Code of Virginia, this is part of our RPS bylaws and policy 5.5. And this states that we may adopt books that are not on the state adopted list, but that it's essential that we have our parents, guardians, community members have a voice and input in this process. So in this process, through the RFP that opened back in December, we had 17 different vendors that submitted for the proposal. The proposal I'll link in a second on in the chat that is also listed on our RPS website. And in that proposal, we have an evaluation committee that helps to evaluate according to the RFP. And Josh will talk a little bit more about that in just a second. And finally, this is the curriculum adoption timeline, where we wrote the scope of work. The scope of work was collected from science leads across the division, as well as our science specialists, and to design what are we looking for. We launched the RFP and we finalized the dates with that. Again, I'll link that RFP in the chat for you all to see and review. From that, it has the timeline in it, We have an evaluation committee that was a collection of principals, assistant principals, special education teachers, teachers across the division, and central office leaders. That curriculum committee reviewed the top curricula, and then the finalists are here to present today and yesterday. After this process, the finalists will be selected by the end of this week. They will negotiate the final contracts, and then that will be presented to our school board for that approval, followed by then implementation with ordering materials and planning professional development. Josh?
Thank you so much, Dr. Neighbors. So just as Autumn said, speaking about curriculum and what differentiates this from simply a textbook, a curriculum, as we are talking about it, has these different kind of buckets of resources and details, starting with very specific goals for both teachers and for learners, and a scope of sequence that is based upon a pacing that we will decide, both me and lead teachers who I work with in the science department. And then beyond that, the methods and units, lesson plans, specific activities, and kind of a method of teaching those activities, and the materials. And when speaking about materials, it is customary to contemplate a large textbook, but what we are thinking more of are, if it's a physical product, it would be a workbook that students can actually write inside of. It would be trade books that are more specific to singular content that students would read about, case studies, things of that nature, but then also all of the digital tools, both the ebook, which they can access on any device, but also digital simulations, digital models that students are able to interact with. And then more than that would also be lab kits that align with the concepts and material that the students are learning, so that students will have an opportunity for hands-on experiences, and very specifically hands-on experiences happening across the district, regardless of zip code, regardless of the specific building you're in. And then finally, assessment. And assessment can mean everything from those daily checks for understanding that might help a teacher determine where to go next, to those larger summative assessments, tests, quizzes, projects, etc. So why do we need a comprehensive district-wide science curriculum? The main goal that we are working towards is to establish a specific style of science teaching in the city of Richmond, so that, once again, regardless of building, we know that there are certain strategies being used, a certain theory and approach to science teaching. The VDOE has just updated the SOL, the Standards of Learning for Science, and they've taken a big step away from the more vocabulary-centered understanding of science of the 2010 standards and towards a conceptually based approach to science. So now is the perfect time to adjust and update our style of teaching. We want to make sure that there's an equity of experience, because it's through that equity of experience, it's through those common experiences that students can really have a foothold into an understanding of science. And then finally, it's very important that we cut down on the amount of time that teachers are spending outside of school searching for resources, searching on the internet for resources that are not vetted in any particular way. And we can't ignore the numbers as well. Here are the last 3 years that were tested of science in Virginia. And I know that these might be a little bit fuzzy on your screens, but what you can see in all cases is this is overall science, grade 5 science, grade 8 science, and biology. And in each case, Richmond is in blue and the state average is in orange. And you can see that we are beneath the state average across the board. So it's a good time to reassess how we are teaching science, the methods, and the materials. I'm going to move a little quickly now because I realize I'm low on time. This quote is very important to the philosophy that we're trying to push in the science department in Richmond is that science is not just some discrete facts that you learn in school. It is something that's all around you. And so therefore, if we are wanting to graduate students who are citizens and informed people, we need to make sure they understand that science is all around them. I think I've pretty much talked about most of this, but want to make sure that everyone is aware that this process aligns well with the Dreams for RPS, specifically 1.3, bringing about an aligned and rigorous curriculum to science students, but then also that we are approaching it from a constructive lens, meaning that students will do the learning and make meaning, and teachers will facilitate that meaning making through hands-on, relevant, and rigorous lessons and activities. I'm going to move down to, here are the people you'll be hearing from tonight. In the K-8 categories, we have STEM Scopes, Amplify, and Savvis. And then for 9-12, we have STEM Scopes, Discovery Education, and Savvis. And you'll hear in great detail about all of them. There are linked to this website here, which we can put in the chat. There is information for you to sample these curricula by logging in and seeing it from the teacher and in some cases the student point of view. And then once you do that, there are feedback forms linked at this website for RPS staff, for parents and community members, and for students if you choose. And we are very interested in all of your feedback. So please consider, please take the time as you have it to look at these curricula and give your feedback. And finally, before we hear from our finalists, I just wanted to end with this quote from Marie Curie, the first woman to win a Nobel Prize in science. This kind of applies both to scientific understanding as well as, I think, to general change. Nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. So now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. And I hope that this is the approach that RPS can take when adopting a science curriculum. And at the end, we will have time for Q&A. So I hope that you will have that. And as Q&A, as questions come up in the chat, Autumn and I will do our best to address them. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and we can move on with the presentations. So first we have our representatives from Amplify. We have Michael and Lauren, I think are the two. So Lauren is sharing and I'll say, take it away, Lauren.
All right, and I'll turn it over to Michael he gets 1 minute of my time, 30 seconds.
I promise not to use any more than that. Thanks very much for the introduction. We really appreciate the vision that you've laid out for Richmond. And speaking on behalf of Amplify, I first want to thank you for the privilege of participating in this process. This is an important and pivotal moment for Richmond and for the children of Richmond. And Amplify feels really strongly that we will be a phenomenal partner for you if you choose to work with us to literally shift the course of life for all of the children of Richmond in terms of them having a strong, hands-on, interactive, continuous, seamless science experience. And we thoroughly embrace the vision that the district has in terms of having students move from what have been some of the more passive modes of learning science to having a place for every student, every child to feel the connection to what is their natural curiosity in life, and then how they might pursue fields in science related to what they learn in the program, or how they might enhance their study of any subject with the critical thinking that comes from gathering evidence and making sense of evidence, and then working with peers to develop strong, well-supported claims. So we're really proud of the program we have, and it's a modern, updated program that aligns to the Virginia standards, and my colleagues are going to show you and tell you more about it now. So Lauren, I think I used just your minute.
I think you went over a smidge, but I'll talk fast. I had a lot of coffee. Good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I was excited to be here, to be asked to be here today. I always tell Michael that I am actually a teacher of Amplify Science, but I'm also a parent of Amplify Children. So you might see me holding up some of my children's work and my students' work during the presentation, but I really want you to know that I have the lens of what you're looking at as well, and as well as I can talk to you as classroom teachers too, and what's going to be happening in the room. As Michael said, we are a brand new science curriculum. We were written for the new standards and the updated model and the things that Josh shared with you today, that, we're studying case studies and singular areas of study. Amplify was authored by the Lawrence Hall of Science, which is a research institution at a university in California. It is at UC Berkeley. They have been writing curriculum for 50 years. So I like to tell people that they have a secret sauce. They know what teachers need and what children need with all of that history. Now, at Amplify Science, every single unit, we ask students to dive into a problem. We ask them to figure something out. So again, to use Josh's words, there's singular case studies that students will work through and will grapple with, which is exactly what scientists are doing every single day. We ask students to do this through the lens of a professional. Your children, whether they are 5 or 14, will embody a career in every single unit. We will ask them to work as a scientist, a medical professional, an engineer, to figure something out. Take a look at the titles on the screen right now. I just came off another session and teachers said, students don't know what the path is until you share it with them. They don't know the career options that are out there until you share it with them. Your students will be exposed to all of these professions and in turn maybe rise up and want to become one of them. Let me give you just a few examples of what that looks like in Amplify Science. Here's an example from kindergarten. In kindergarten, students are working in one unit as ecologists, and they're working to figure out why the monarch caterpillar is no longer thriving in a community garden. It used to be a large field. The community said, let's build a garden, and the caterpillar disappeared. So your students will work through this unit to figure out what changed, what caused the change in the environment. They will get outside, or they will understand that they are built as a scientist with their senses. They will read or listen to rich science research. They will have visual aid and support. Remember, these are 5-year-olds. So we've got visuals there that they will sort, guided step-by-step instructions for them as they construct a plan to bring back the caterpillar. So at the end of the unit, they will come up with a plan and they will have a gallery walk around the room to see what everyone's solution was to bringing back that caterpillar. Here's an example from 2nd grade. In 2nd grade, and one of the unit students are geologists, and they are geologists working to figure out if a recreation center should be moved. So if you look in the lower right-hand corner of my screen, you'll see that there's 2 images of a flagpole. Well, the flagpole is getting closer and closer to the edge of the cliff. And the students will have to figure out why that's happening. And should that recreation center that's adjacent to the flagpole be moved? They will use that through the context to learn about erosion and how things change over time. They will conduct physical experiments. They will use digital tools. They will gather data. Note that all of these resources that you see on the screen are all part of the kit the teacher would have in the classroom. So the spray bottles, the chalk they're spraying on, the containers, so that students really become the part of the science and get to conduct the experiments as well. In 3rd grade, this is one of my favorite units to teach, and 3rd grade students are meteorologists. I love this unit because it is an argumentation unit. We are going to teach your children how to argue respectfully. They are going to come home and tell you why they have strong or weak evidence about something. In this unit, students have to figure out what is the best island for an orangutan reserve. So they gather data through the unit, they're reading rich research, they're gathering charts, they're gathering data from charts and graphs and digital tools. And at the end of the unit, they make their prediction. And their prediction has to come with strong evidence. So your students will have some great language when they come home to share why they should have that second serving of dessert, as they'll give you some nice strong research and evidence. The last unit that I want to share with you is a unit out of 4th grade. And in this unit, your students are systems engineers. They have an opportunity every year to be an engineer. Students are trying to help a town figure out why it keeps having blackouts. Students will learn about simple systems and how systems help solve problems. They will work with solar panels and alligator clips and batteries and fans and gather all this information as they learn about what is the best form of energy. They will also use a digital simulation in this grade. As students learn about what are different forms of energy, for instance, fuel, we don't want that in the classroom, so you have a digital simulation for that. You'll have a simulation to show how a generator provides energy, how wind turbines and wind provides energy. Simulations are fun and engaging for students, but also allow you to bring things into the classroom that you might not have, and you as the parent will have access to them at home as well. At the end of this unit, students also use their argumentation skills and they present their findings to the town. In a town hall meeting, the mayor will ask, "What do you recommend for us?" And students will have to respectfully share their findings and agree or disagree with their classmates. One of the things that makes me really proud to be at Amplify is that we really are meeting you wherever you are as parents and teachers. We are constantly enhancing the curriculum. And during the pandemic, we added more resources for the classroom teacher to continue science happening at home. So during the pandemic, the Lawrence Hall of Science wrote additional shortened lessons, and they provided those to the classroom teacher in packets. So if your child was at home and we did not have internet access or a device, there was a packet only path for that learner. As a classroom teacher, some teachers like to use Google Classrooms or assign things digitally. All of the lessons have Google slide decks and Google Sheets, so your students can stay connected and continue the science whether they're at home or school. In addition to that, to help you with at home with your learners, please know that there are videos of every single step of the lesson. I know that during the pandemic, I've had to be the parent of my child and the teacher in the last 8 months. And as I try to help support at home, it's wonderful to have videos that show exactly what would be happening in the classroom. These are videos that you can watch with your students, your child. You can have them watch as well. If your child is sick a day, your teacher will always be able to share these videos and resources with you. These are accessible anywhere. We have YouTube, and oftentimes the teachers like to assign them via the Google Classroom. Before I let you go, I do want you to know that I mentioned that Amplify, we have sort of the secret sauce to teaching, and the Lawrence Hall of Science calls this the multimodal approach to science. We want to immerse your students in science, and we want them to be articulate in science. And through that, we ask them to do a variety of different things. We're going to ask them to do hands-on activities. So they'll come home and talk to you about that. Hands-on looked different this last year. Do know that you also have digital tools. Students will be able to watch hands-on activities. Material will be in the classroom. So your teachers, your student's child's teacher will have the tools to conduct the physical experiments. We also are going to ask students to visualize things through digital models. We like to say technology grows up with students. So we start with videos and we add digital tools and games and simulations as they move up the grade level. The digital simulation, I already spoke about those when I talked about the generator and the fuel in 4th grade, but they're to engage students at home and in the classroom and allow them to see things they can't touch. We also are going to expose your students to lots of rich scientific readers. Please know that all of these resources are available in English and Spanish. Students will have access to these anywhere they have internet access. They are also print readers that your students will have. As your students move through their curriculum, the last thing I want you to know is, we're going to ask students to write and record their findings. There is a scientific notebook or journal where they will compile their work as they move through that unit. And that is accessible at home, at school, it's print, it's digital. Students can access this online or through a Google Classroom or a fillable PDF. The last thing I'll share with you is I do want you to know that there is a website for you as parents. There is a caregiver website that is always available to you should you want to learn more about the curriculum or how you can help at home, or conversation starters about unit topics that you could have around the dinner table if you like. I often get questions about materials. So in a moment, I'm going to turn it over to Tom, my colleague. But before I do that, I want to share one quote with you. And you have to laugh, Autumn and Josh, you already heard this yesterday. My apologies. But yesterday I shared this quote from a magazine article. We were interviewed, or a classroom teacher using our curriculum was interviewed in the middle of teaching the curriculum. And the reporter said to the teacher, you know, tell me a little bit about the curriculum. She said, it's so lovely. It's nice to see students gathering evidence and evaluating things and communicating their reasoning. And then this reporter turned to the third grader in the classroom and said, it's so nice the way you're helping the wildlife biologist. And this third grader shut her down and said, no, I am the wildlife biologist. So we truly immerse your students in the curriculum so that they can be a part of the solution and figuring things out. I'm sure you have some questions for me. I'm going to stop sharing so that my colleague Tom can hold up some resources and show you the inside of some things should you have some questions. Tom.
Thanks, Lauren. I was addressing a lot of the questions in the chat that came in about our material kits and things like that. And so I'm here in my backyard building working in a pandemic where I've set up this display here. And so a couple of the ways in which our program will work for students to gather information is through our investigation notebooks. And I have one in English and Spanish. Our entire platform can exist in print and in digitally in Spanish as well as English. And that includes all the print resources that come ready for the teacher out of our material kits. So students will have access to work through these. Also, the student text exists digitally. We also have a read aloud where a real teacher is videoed reading the text to students in both English and in Spanish. And these are the Spanish versions of those 5 texts. And so a teacher will have a materials kit so students can do some really great hands-on investigation. And hands-on with Amplify means physically building, developing, designing, and coming up with solutions to these problems. And they're collecting evidence in a way that we really want them to be engaged in this process. But it doesn't just end with doing a lab. The lab is important. But what follows is just as important as where students have scientific discourse. We provide over 8 different strategies for students to think, pair, share, to ask questions to each other, to refer to the vocabulary that is included and up on the wall. So that becomes part of their dialogue, and it really develops a conceptual understanding that's much deeper. So we call it multiple at-bats. So one at-bat is hands-on. The next one is a discussion. The third one might be working in a digital simulation. The fourth one is going to be maybe a teacher showing a video. And these multiple at-bats allow students to hit a home run and really develop that science understanding that is so important. Are there any other questions coming in, Lauren, about the materials? I know
Not about the materials. We did have a question about how many other school districts use Amplify.
Yeah, we could, across the United States, actually internationally. I was actually on this morning with a school district in Saudi Arabia. So we are used in districts as large as New York City, Denver, Seattle, Los Angeles, as well as small independent private schools and charter schools across the nation. We have a footprint pretty much everywhere across the board. One thing I want to show here, someone asked about design and engineering. So some of our engineering, we have engineering focal units where students may engage as a pinball machine engineer to build a pinball machine, or be a food engineer and come up with a new salad dressing. In this case, this is what's called an engineering task, where in use of magnets, students are going to create balanced forces where they actually provide all these material in the kit where they can get this paper clip to float in the air if they design it just right. So you see that floating paper clip, my finger can pass through here. And kids will come up with the most amazing designs beyond what I just did, this basic model. And they're going to collect data by marking the string with a ruler and pulling to the point which that paperclip falls, and collecting that data and creating graphs around that. So it's a comprehensive blended approach to hit those science and engineering practices.
Right.
Anything else coming in?
I believe, let's see, I just saw a hand up and then it went down.
Data showing improvements. So I am going to share, we do have a district in Nebraska, where in Nebraska, they give a state test in grades 4 and 8. They did share some important data with us. They were really concerned about certain groups of learners, special ed students, English language learners, and also free and reduced lunch students. So within 1 year of implementation, they closed the learning gap with the SPED students by 5.5%. with the EL students, English language learners, and mostly Spanish speakers, 12.9% gap closure in 1 year. And then the free and reduced lunch students had also about a 6% improvement to their peers. And so districts are sharing a lot of great data with us. And what's nice is that we have data tools built in for administrators and coaches and to develop and see reports of growth over the course of a unit.
Thank you, Tom. I think we've hit our 20-minute marker. Josh and Autumn, I know we want to keep you on task, but we'll be here should you have additional questions.
Yeah, I ended a little late, so you actually have a couple more minutes if you'd like. You have
Yay.
two and a half or so more minutes.
Oh, great, great. Let me peek in the chat here.
There's a question about how does your curriculum fit in with PBLs?
Oh, perfect. Tom, do you want to share that example you were just talking about too?
Oh, project-based learning?
Hmm?
Yeah, so all of our units are project-based learning. And what's nice about the way we shift those is that the students actually take on a career role as a STEM scientist or an engineer. And so they will have a real world problem that they have to work through to come up with a solution over the course of the unit. Along the way, they're going to have lessons that address little phenomenon, you know, like building that paperclip and that floating paperclip challenge, but it all ties into a bigger project. In that case, understanding how a floating train might work, really cool magnetic levitation trains that are being developed. So not only is our science problem based, but it's also modern and forward thinking and things that students may have not ever been exposed to before.
And I'm just going to throw a quick note in as we wrap up here as well, which is to say that, you know, for the myth that instructional materials arrive in a district and that implementation just goes forward is somewhat of a myth in that, you know, Amplify works as a partner directly with districts. We essentially are a living, breathing part of implementation until we find that we are able to transfer capacity to the district to really fly on their own. But we see this as an ongoing collaboration to make sure that children and teachers in Richmond are getting what children and teachers in Richmond ought to get and need. So we have a very strong commitment to you personally. There's a question about whether materials are updated, and yes, they are updated. That's one of the benefits of digital as well, is that updates can be made continuously, and in science, that's especially important.
And very quickly, Michael, before we leave, Michael Powell, you had a question about K2 lessons. So the first two examples that I shared, the ecology as we look, students as ecologists, as we were looking at the monarch butterfly population, and students working as geologists, were just two examples of how K2 looks, but we immerse students in scientific careers and problems as they work through that multiple at bat. So we're gonna ask them to talk. We're gonna ask them to listen to books or try to partner read or shared read, do physical models, watch things. So you will have multiple experiences with it. Sorry, Josh, I see you.
Yeah, I'm sorry to cut you all off, but it is time to move on to our next group. There will be time for more answers at the end, and of course, you can answer in the chat as well.
Thank you.
So thank you so much, Amplify, and now I'm so happy to see Pam O'Brien and Sarah Calkins from Accelerate and STEM Scopes. They are here, and you guys can take it away. Welcome.
Perfect. Thank you, Josh. Thank you so much for having us. Before we get started, I'd like to just do a brief activity with you all. And if you wouldn't mind, just close your eyes or think back to a time when you were in school and you were in your science classroom. What do you remember? I have some pretty vivid memories. Pam shared some of hers with me as well. We sort of share stories back and forth, but we're probably thinking of the same type of things that you're thinking of. You're probably not remembering a video, and you're probably not remembering a reading passage. I bet your memory is of you doing hands-on science, whether it's bottle biology, Michael. We appreciate that feedback. Absolutely. I have a pumpkin lesson that I remember, and Pam remembers a snake. And we always hear feedback that people are thinking about dissections and the frog and things of that nature. So really it's that essence that hands-on science is so important for students to take away these memories. And that's exactly what we have at STEM Scopes. We have a constructivist approach to teaching science that centers on hands-on, discovery-based social experience. So my name is Sarah, and I'm the account manager for Accelerate Learning in Virginia. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Pam O'Brien. Pam is our Virginia Regional STEM coach. A little bit about STEM Scopes. We were founded at Rice University, and we were born out of professional development in which teachers were receiving training in science inquiry best practices. It's really at the core and the heart of who we are. We pride ourselves on being comprehensive aligned so that teachers are able to focus on teaching rather than seeking out additional resources that may be needed to fill gaps from, a one-size-fits-all textbook curriculum. STEM Scopes Virginia was written specifically for Virginia teachers and students. We're not a national program that has merely been aligned to your new standards. We have granular alignment to the 2018 Virginia Science Standards of Learning, and we use the 5E model of instruction. We go a step further, however, and we add intervention and acceleration resources, and we do that across 3 platforms. We have digital, kit, and print materials available. I'm going to stop my piece right now, and I'm going to turn it over to Pam, and Pam's going to take you on a brief tour of the digitally delivered portion of our curriculum. Pam?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am excited to be talking to Richmond Public Schools. I have quite a long history with you all. I worked at the Math Science Innovation Center for 15 years and really just became very familiar with Richmond Public Schools. And I'm excited to talk to you about this curriculum that is aligned to the 2018 Virginia Science Standards. So just a little bit about what you're seeing on the screen now. This is our program, and our program has built-in tools, including a teacher planner, a place where you can assign work to students and then receive that feedback back. There is a place to build your own assessments. There's a help feature in case you just kind of need a little bit of in-time professional development or tutorials. But what we really want to spend some time on, because we know we don't have a great deal of time, is the curriculum itself. We are made up of chapters, or what we call scopes. And one of the very nice features of this site is if you are needing to go to a scope rather quickly after you've kind of looked through what you want to get to, we have these bookmark features. So I can automatically just click on any of these scopes and arrive there with the click of a button. So this one is actually 5th grade static electricity, 5.4C static electricity. What you will notice about STEM scopes is there are no point ones, because as we know, those point 1 standards have been infused into the new 2018 standards, and our curriculum does reflect that. We do have, under our home tab, we have teacher background. Teacher background is used for those teachers who maybe just are not as familiar with the science content. But one way that we have found that we have been using this teacher background during this last year is to actually share that information with parents. We know that parents have had to do a lot of that, more of that facilitating of the science activities with their students at home. And so we provide that teacher background, not only for the teacher, but for you as the parent. The Virginia Standards Alignment. This is going to show you where we are directly aligned with the 2018 science standards, as well as the curriculum framework. This is a lot of information. This feels just a bit overwhelming when we look at it, and that's not its intent. This is to show you that we have done that heavy lifting. You don't have to go out and find those standards aligned activities. So enough about the standards. Let's talk about the 5E model of instruction. The 5E model of instruction allows for the students to have a common experience around the science before they read about it or watch a video about it. That is important. But we want to make sure that we have this common experience around the engage and explore, where the students are investigating, they are gathering evidence, they are sharing that scientific experience, and then moving on to that sense-making piece. So in engage, we provide an introduction. It's a quick, short activity designed to elicit those students' interest and say, hey, what's this all about? It might be in the form of a question. It might be in the form of a video. It might be in the form of a hands-on activity. It's something to just kind of capture those students' attention. And more importantly, we want to make sure that we are hearing from our students. And in that, at the end of each of our activities, we provide ELL strategies. These strategies are designed to elicit responses from the students so that we know where they're at this point. We want to make sure that we are giving the students all that they need and not anything that they may already come to us knowing. So this is a great place for that formative assessment, that check for knowledge. Another piece that we have as a support to the teachers is these setup videos. These setup videos are designed so that you just can watch the video and see exactly how to set up the activity. It's not designed for your students, it's designed for you to feel more comfortable with that, so you can share that experience with your students. Then we move on to explore. Explore is really the heart of our curriculum. Just think about what that word means, explore. We want our students really to explore that hands-on science. We want them to collaborate together. We want them to work together in groups. And we want them to begin to see what this science concept is all about. With that, we provide all that you need as far as procedure and facilitation points, setup videos. We are not a scripted curriculum. We are not a 1, 2, 3 curriculum. We guide you through so that you have the freedom to choose how you will facilitate with this with your students. We do have a way for your students to interact with the program by assigning things directly through STEM scopes. Our pages are also available in Google Slides as well as print files. So there's a nice choice as to how you will share that with your students. Once they've had those experiences, we do have a lot of opportunities for the students to make sense of what they've just experienced. We have picture vocabulary, so the students can have those formal vocabulary words. We have videos that the students, how the students can interact. We have something called the STEMscopedia, which is our student text. The student text is going to be, that comes after that common experience that the students have had. And this is going to be kind of able to fill in those gaps. If you assign this directly to your students through STEM scopes, there is a text to speech feature, which allows the text to be read to the students. And something else that is part of the STEMscopedia that we found very valuable in the last year. So we actually have something called Connecting with Your Child. This has been in our curriculum for years, but we found that this was very useful this year because quite honestly, sometimes those hands-on activities were really hard to facilitate in a virtual learning situation. And so connecting with your child allows for you as a parent or a caregiver, or even as a teacher, to do these activities in just a little bit more simplistic way. There's still good activities, but just kind of allowing for a little bit more simple procedure. Explain, all about that sense making. And then we have elaborate. Elaborate is where you can really dig deep and kind of allow for those cross-curricular connections, those connections to the real world, simulation practices, allowing the students to kind of see in a simulation what they have just experienced through the explore activities. And then of course, my personal favorite, that engineering connection. The engineering connection, each scope has an engineering design challenge designed to help the students really kind of really express their understanding in really kind of a non-traditional format. With that, we have that final E of evaluate. We do have 3 forms of evaluation. We have a post-assessment where the students are simply answering questions, open-ended response where they need to have a little bit more of an explanation behind that answer. And then we have claim evidence reasoning. So the idea behind the 5E model is that the students are introduced to something. They are experiencing it, they make sense of it, and then they need to demonstrate that understanding of the science concept. And a claim evidence reasoning is really just the breakdown of a scientific explanation where we really want our students to go. Can our students express themselves scientifically? Can they take what they've learned and can they either through a demonstration or through a writing activity, can they really articulate that learning that's occurred? I know last week I went long, so I turned on a little alarm for myself today. And then we do have intervention and acceleration, just allows for more differentiation within the curriculum itself. So I don't know if that was 10 minutes or if I can keep talking, or I
Um,
know I went over last night, so I wanted to be very cognizant of that.
that was 10 minutes, but let's see, you started at 6:04, so you have until 6:24.
Okay, perfect. Sarah, do we have any questions in the chat that we can talk about, or?
Yes, there was a couple of questions. I tried to answer them best, but around students actually seeing themselves in the curriculum, a little bit about career connections, and then different scientists with different varied backgrounds and some of their, things that they've been noted for doing in the world of science.
Absolutely. So, so a couple ways that we can look at that. And first, I'm just going to say that I think when students are doing science, they then can look in the mirror and say, I'm a scientist, this is what I'm doing. But then we also want to make sure that we're providing opportunities for those students to see others who maybe have gone before them and who are models for them. And so we do have a place within our curriculum. It is part of the curriculum, but set kind of in a toolbox format called the teacher toolbox. And in that teacher toolbox, along with a lot of different other resources, we have science in the workplace. And this is where you'll find different videos on career connections, people explaining the different careers that they have and kind of what that entails. And then we also have scientist spotlights highlighting different scientists within that particular area of science that the students may be studying. So I saw a question on assessments. And so just to answer that question briefly, yes, we do have built-in assessments. They come in a couple different formats. Obviously, at the end of the 5 E's, at the end of each scope, you're going to have those built-in assessments, but we do have this assessment builder that is also part of our program. And so if you are interested in building different types of assessments other than just what you see at the end of that scope, you will be able to build them with the assessment builder as well.
There was a question also, Pam, just regarding PBL integration.
So so the way that I kind of look at this curriculum, I kind of think about, so one of the fantastic things about STEM Scopes to me is that it is not scripted. It is what I would call more guided. And so I feel like there is a very strong foundation that is laid with the curriculum. And you as the teacher have the opportunity and the freedoms to kind of choose whether you just kind of follow it the way that it's laid out, or whether there's some different modifications that you can make. And I think there's a real power to that, because curriculums do not teach students, teachers teach students. And so when I think about PBL specifically, I look at that engineering connection and I say, that is not something that I'm going to introduce to the students at the end. That's something that I'm going to introduce at the beginning. And I'm going to kind of, as a teacher, I'm going to know my students. I'm going to know where I live. I'm going to know where my students are at. And we're going to take that engineering connection and we're going to tie it into something that's going on within our community. And that's where we're going to start. And then we're going to use the different activities within STEM Scopes to follow through and then build that engineering challenge and perhaps add on and present that into more of a problem-based or a project-based situation.
Someone had a question. I think you addressed it earlier, but just, is it all digital, or could you talk about the physical components as well?
Absolutely. I can talk about that again, just to kind of reiterate that. So what you're looking at here is just a ginormous teacher guide. Okay, just imagine, those of you who are teachers in the audience, if you've taught longer than, I don't know, 10 or 20 years, you have that spiral bound, ginormous book that you would open. That's what this is and more. There's not only the curriculum, but the program. And so that's what you would use. In this, there's everything you need to facilitate any of the activities. but how you share it with students may differ. That's where you also have a choice. So there are workbooks that are available if you would like your students to, use a workbook to go through the different activities. Obviously, you would be facilitating the engage and the explore, but just kind of think of those classic workbook pages. Those also come in a Google format. And so if you are a Google teacher, if you use Google Classroom, you can use those to share with the students that way. And you can also assign work to the students digitally right through the STEMscopes platform. The other choice that you have is that our STEMscopedia, which is the student text, that is available in a hardcover book. So if you have some students who you would just like to, they just would like that book, that's something that is available as well. So where the program is digital, it's not something designed where the students just work modularly through the different activities. This is definitely something where, you're having whole group discussions, small group collaborations, students kind of working and thinking together as scientists. And then the way that they interact with this program really becomes a choice based on teacher preference. And I will tell you quite honestly, after the year we've been through, circumstances that we may all find ourselves in. And STEMscopes really does offer that flexibility that you can provide the work to your students in a variety of different ways.
You have just a couple more minutes left, Pam. There's a question about integration of math concepts.
Absolutely. So we do have under Elaborate, there is a math connections piece. And so that's going to be something where you'll have a math activity that kind of correlates that science activity with that math. And then once again, I do look at those engineering connections. That to me is true STEM. And we know that STEM really is that integration of the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It's not an acronym, it's a concept. And so you will find that in the engineering connections. You may also find some math activities kind of embedded within our extension activities. The extension activities are designed for those students who may just want to dig a little deeper, go a little further with this particular science concept. I know when I taught at the center, we would have Saturday classes, and boy, we'd get those kids who were just like, they were all about science. Some kids went to soccer camp, some kids went to science camp. And so those extension activities are really designed with those students in mind.
Pam, there's just one more question that's come in. Is there an emphasis on citizen science? Could you just mention maybe 1 or 2 lines about Virginia's 5 C's and how we address that in our curriculum?
Absolutely. So when we think of the 5 C's of Virginia, the piece of this curriculum where I think of the most is this communicate science. And this is where the students are actually going to be kind of internalizing a question and then kind of talking about how they might go about answering that question or solving that problem. And so I think about when we look at that those 5 C's of collaboration and citizenship and communication, this is a piece that really plays then nicely with those. I also think that when you have the students working with those explore activities, there's a lot of collaboration going on there. With the engineering design challenge, those are usually revolving around, improving the world around us. And so those are some ways that I think of those 5 C's being addressed.
Great. Thank you so much, Pam and Sarah, for that presentation and for addressing all those great questions. Thank you to everyone asking questions. We're going to take a 5-minute break for Mr. Hernandez to take a moment, our interpreter. So while we do that, hopefully people can be thinking of questions. If you have questions, you can be putting them in the chat still. But we will reconvene at 6:29.
Thank you all very much for your time.
Mr. Hernandez, are you ready to go?
Yes.
Yes, excellent. Just before we introduce our next finalist, I just wanted to say, as the K-12 science specialist, that many of these questions, especially regarding local investigations and outdoor investigations, I just want to make it clear to everyone that adopting a curriculum is not going to preclude teachers taking part in schoolyard activities and doing schoolyard science. That it is one of the goals of the So with that, I want to introduce our next finalists from Savvis. We have Mitch Mitchell, I see, and Jacqueline Orgain and Shannon Still, all from Savvis. So welcome to the three of you.
Thank you very much, Josh. Mic check, am I coming through okay?
You are.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Mitch Mitchell, and I am your Savvis account manager for Richmond Public Schools. And I look forward to working with the Richmond area parents and the community. Yes, our new name is Savvis, formerly Pearson, and we are presently partnering with the district to support social studies, world languages, CTE, and we definitely want to partner with Richmond in science. Presently, we have over 15 Virginia school districts partnering with us in science. Personally, I am a former classroom teacher, as well as my colleagues who you will hear and meet today. And we bring our teacher experiences to help our Richmond children to achieve and enjoy engagement. Today, you have an opportunity to experience virtually an awesome and very easy to access and use the Realize platform, which all of our titles operate regardless if it's elementary, middle, or high school. Because of our integration with Clever and Google Classroom, the single sign-on is seamless for students and parents. The Savvis solutions proposed for this adoption are Elevate Science, which is a K-8 solution, Experience Biology, Experience Chemistry, and Earth Science/Environment. All of these titles can be implemented completely digital as well as digital/print. During this presentation, you're going to see the importance of cultural diversity, multi-language integration, the Virginia SOL and the 5 E's threaded throughout, customizable instruction for the local environment, and laser-focused data assessment to support students needing additional intervention. Our materials were approved by the state in the summer of 2020. So today, Jackie Orgain, our Savvis Science Specialist, will present the functionality of our Realize platform for all of our titles. Jackie, take it over.
Thank you, Mitch. I appreciate that. And I'm so thrilled to be here with you all today. So we are focused on a full K-12 solution. So I'm going to be jumping a little bit here and there, but I want to focus on how Savvis learning addresses all levels of learner, no matter whether we're K-5 or 6-8 or high school, and how we really can reach that Richmond student. So as I begin today, as Mitch mentioned, we do have our K-8 solution that is Elevate Science. And I am thrilled that all of our programs are vertically aligned to reach and meet those brand new standards for your students. So you'll find that those scientific and engineering practices just kind of flow perfectly throughout. Now, as we look at overall curriculum and kind of strategies with our program, and I'll go digital here in just a moment, our focus at Savvis is that students are doing science. That's our primary goal, because we believe that when students do science, they learn science. And it's not just important to learn the concept of science, but to really have that common experience, so that no matter where our students are coming from or where they go to, they all have that ability to really get their hands in with multimodal experiments and opportunities to learn, to build, to create. And we do provide kits to go along with those solutions. So if you're in the need of needing resources for a specific topic, we have those. But we also want to encourage our students and teachers to look at the world around them and connect in multiple ways. So while your students are doing those hands-on instruction, they're beginning to think critically and solve problems. We want to support them in acting like scientists. So at Savvis, while students are doing the science and they're making those observations, we want to give them an opportunity to save those wonderful ideas that they come up with. So we do provide, if you wish, a physical edition for your students. They are a work text, they are consumable. They allow your students to write, to annotate, to keep their thinking in one place, just like all scientists do. But we know that that's often not always possible. So whether we're keeping our hands-on learning or we're doing it digitally, your students still have the opportunity to save their thinking, to explore virtually, to make connections, all while doing science and allowing them to reach all levels of learners. So whether no matter where we are in our learning journey, we have a solution and a way to reach that student. And it gives their, was there a question? Now on that learning platform, that platform is called a Savvis Realize. That's a single place for all of those digital resources. We are so thrilled that this platform has been recognized by industry leaders to be used in remote learning possibilities. So one of our newest awards is that award in excellence for remote learning, thanks to this pandemic. And I'm so thrilled that we've had that opportunity. But in that digital resource that I'm going to go show you here in just a moment, you have the opportunity to build in those resources through Google Classroom, through Canvas, through Schoology. So we have that direct connection directly into that resource. So I'm actually going to go live right now and just quickly show you what this looks like. So as I'm looking at Savvis Realize, you have the opportunity to have all of your resources in one place. As a teacher, you'll notice our Virginia specific resources, and that is specifically because they are aligned to that framework. And I'm going to spend a little time here with our physical science, and that is the Lesner Bridge over in Virginia Beach, just in case you're wondering. But here I am, and I have the full table of contents, and I have all of my resources in one place. So as a teacher, I'm able to quickly assign things. As a student, I'm able to access all of my content in one place. So here we open our launch and we begin our launch at Savvis with problem-based learning, a quest, a journey of learning that's going to connect students to an overall solution. And then I see all of my lessons and some of my assessments here at the end. I'm going to jump into lesson 2 just to show you a little bit of what this platform looks like. We begin with lessons and a chance to get into that hands-on inquiry. And at Savvis, we really believe that as our students have a chance to do that hands-on inquiry in their classrooms, we may want to have them read after, so that now that they've had that common experience, we want to bring in that text. So if they're doing this physically, they have that full color consumable edition. If they're doing it digitally, it looks something like this. We do have the standards directly embedded for that your students know where they're moving along their pathway of learning, as well as the teachers. Some additional supports for your students on the digital side. We have auditory
Chemical
support.
change. Guiding questions. How can data about the
So we have that auditory support. We have the direct vocabulary listed. One of my favorites is that we can actually type and write, and it's in full color, so it's engaging for students. In different parts of their exploration as they build and create, we also want to ask them their thinking. have that conversation with our students. Maybe type in my notebook, what are 3 ways that the veggies have changed? Well, they might be brown, or they're smaller. So all of those opportunities, they can kind of they can type and write and save directly here. And when I'm ready, I can keep these notes from day to day. As your students have the opportunity to physically write in a consumable book, they would also have the opportunity to highlight, let's see here, to highlight, annotate, and mark in here as well. So no matter how your students are accessing that content, you have that capability with Savvas Learning. Now, one thing I do want to point out, because of the way this book is written, you're able to have it accessible in multiple languages. So while we do provide resources in both Spanish and English in multiple levels, sometimes we have students that move in with different language needs. Maybe I have a student who moves in with needing some Arabic support, and allowing you to translate that text into multiple languages. And then, oh, there we go. And then click on the ability to do that auditory support in multiple languages for your students. So while we're thinking of our students and thinking of our process, we want to engage our students in multiple chances for discourse. So we begin every topic with a chance to engage in that phenomena. Here you'll see fireflies. I might ask them what allows fireflies to glow. I don't expect my students to all have that answer, but what I do encourage them is to think, to wonder, to really have that conversation with each other and have that empathy in the classroom for each other's experiences, and then ask those bigger questions. Then we're going to go ahead and tackle a lab. These labs are not cookie cutter labs that you may see. We're asking our students to put themselves in the position as a scientist. So they're designing their own procedure. They're asking those big questions. And throughout a lot of their digital experiences, or maybe their hands-on labs, we're going to come across a chance to seamlessly become engineers and solve those real-world problems. So all of our engineering design challenges embedded in every topic allow our students to solve big questions. Here, we're turning contaminated water into drinking water, and they're going to design a filter, but they have a chance to run through the entire engineering process and show their creativity, collaborate with others, communicate those ideas, and bring that home to their own community, because we know that many communities often have those water insecurities as well. Now, thinking of some project-based learning as we go into high school, you'll see we ask our students some big questions. For what purposes should humans genetically modify animals? Not yes or no, but for what purposes? They're going to engage in a series of activities, classroom discussions, interactivities, authentic readings for real science that's happening, and bring that back to their project and their problem and propose that solution. While our students are learning through the content, whether they be that hands-on deep exploration, those engineering design challenges where they get to create and build and solve those problems, we also want to develop that literacy connection so that students grow up to have the skills they need to be successful in analyzing any situation. So we do focus on literacy skills inside of science, focusing on maybe cause and effect or analyzing authentic text, the skills that students need and can translate to any job. We pause for our readers in many places to support their learning and have them explain and develop that comprehension for not just the content, but their own thinking and where am I in my learning journey. Now, not all literacy means for like actual words. We want to look at processes, nonlinear chance infographics, all of those ways to connect with information, and students have a chance to engage with that in multiple ways. Now, specifically for my K-5 parents, we know your kids are avid, they're little sponges of information. So we want to support them with reading nonfiction text in a way that works for them. So we do provide readers both physically and digitally in our program that offer our students a new way of looking at some ideas in science and great ways of bringing in those reading skills as well. Lastly, before I answer any questions, this last couple of years has been, or this last year specifically has been a challenge for all parents. We're all learning new things. And at Savvis, we really believe that parents and the community, we want to support you in your development. So we've actually developed the Parents Corner so that if you have questions as you're using resources or need some additional support, maybe some how-to videos. These do come in multiple languages. They come in about 7 different languages for all of our families. And we do look forward to partnering with our parents and communities as your students engage in that deep conceptual understanding through that hands-on learning. Because at Savvis Learning, we really believe that it's the science of doing that develops our students. And I want to pause here and see if there's any other questions I might be able to address. So I take a look at our chat. We do have lots of questions. How will the innovation be equal? Yes, Mitch, go ahead.
I was going to say, I believe that Scott is answering most of those for you.
Wonderful, wonderful.
You might want to, if you have a few seconds left, you might want to click on biology or either chemistry.
Yeah,
just kind
sure.
of let them glance at that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So Mitch, there's a question about other school districts around the country. We have a lot of districts around the country that use it, but we have some specifically in Virginia. Shannon or Mitch, if you want to answer that question specifically.
Yes, we will answer that for you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So thinking of our students and all of those resources you can see in our biology program, we have everything organized really seamlessly for your students. I think there was a question about how will
Jackie, we did get a question about the engineering design book.
Okay.
Several questions there.
Yes, great. Okay, so I will switch gears really quickly. So that engineering and design notebook does come with multiple programs. You'll see it's right here in our physical science. Oh, my apologies. My internet might be a little tired today. So we'll jump into our life science. Okay. They must be doing an edit and have pulled it. We always are constantly updating that resource. So it does come in PDF form that is fillable that you can actually type in and write in without any additional software. And it does allow your students to both interact digitally if they don't wish to interact in the physical notebook as well. So those are those options. I do want to let everyone know, if you're a teacher or a parent, that in your class, with your students, with Savvis Realize, and have it integrating into Google Classroom and to Canvas, you and your students have the opportunity to gather data. So all of our assessments are available. They're customizable. They provide rich data for both your students, but also your teachers. So inside it, I'm looking at this as a teacher. Yes.
Just want to give you a 1-minute warning.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to let you know that we do provide full data analysis that is aligned for the SOL standards and allow you to sort your students by performance to address all levels of learner. As a parent, you're able to see your students' grades and track that progress. And if you're using Google Classroom, all of the resources do directly integrate into that class stream because we have a deep linking ability. So your grades go in both places. And I think with that, I'll see if there's any last questions. I know we just have another moment. Okay, well, I want to.
Well, thank you so much, Jacqueline. Thank you, Shannon, and thank you, Mitch. All three of these people will be in the chat and available for more questions.
Thank you
so Josh.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have her last. We have our last finalists of the evening. We have Brad and Kelly from Discovery Ed, and I see Brady in the windows as well. So welcome to the three of you all, and we'll call it 6:50 as a start. And yes, welcome.
Sounds great. Thank you, Josh, and thank you, team, and thanks to each of you for taking time this evening. Really excited about it. My name is Kelly Host. I have the pleasure of serving our Senior Director of Education Partnerships here with Discovery Education. I've got two of my esteemed colleagues, Brad Fountain, who's going to do most of the heavy lifting today, and our friend Brady Thomas, who will be working in the background supporting the chat. So if you do have questions in the chat, please drop them in. We'll be monitoring it, and we'll make sure that we do our very best to answer every question along the way. And some good questions we've been following along in the chat so far. Many of you probably are familiar with Discovery Education. We are the global leader in nonfiction education content. Proud to bring you brands like Science Channel and Animal Planet, partnerships with the NBA and Major League Baseball and WNBA, and so many great ways to bring real world and relevant content into the classroom. What does that mean for Virginia? It means that we built a standard aligned resource built for the SOLs in Virginia, not aligned, not crosswalk, but truly built for Virginia and the 5E model of instruction. Also equitable resources for all learners. You're going to find support for your ELL students. You're going to find support for your students that struggle with reading. You're going to find support for your students who are high flyers and need additional support. Lots of different ways that we can support all learners. And most importantly, maybe engaging content that's easy to use, easy for teachers, easy for parents to support, and also easy for students to support. One of the other things you'll see is a ton of real world experiences built in around STEM and STEAM. We are the only program certified by the Global STEM Alliance, and we'll make sure that we've got those resources available and we share those with you today. And I believe that's going to be it for me, and I'm going to turn it over to Brad, but I will highlight a couple of our partnerships in Virginia. These aren't just partners. These are partners that are using Discovery Education Virginia Science Experience. I think I saw in the chat window, and I would just add that Chesapeake is a brand new K-12 partner that was just board approved a couple of weeks ago. So we got a lot of partners out there in Virginia that have done their due diligence. We know you all are doing yours, and we hope that you'll find Discovery Education to be a good fit to support your students. With no further ado, I will let my colleague Brad Fountain take it away again. Shoot questions over to the chat and we'll monitor. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Brad.
Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate it. So welcome, everybody. Thank you for giving us a little bit of your time, and thank you for what you're doing for students out there. I'm married to a teacher. I have school-age kids, so I appreciate everything you guys do day in and day out. It's an amazing job to do, and it's really hard when you have COVID going on. So thank you guys for what you're doing to support those students out there. This is the main landing page for Discovery Education, and I'll refer back to this in a few moments, but this is where you can search for content by subject or standard. The purple or lavender section is where you can actually create resources. Studio is a great lesson creator. So if you want to customize a lesson that we have or customize resources to build your own lesson, you have that capability. And students can also build their whole opportunities to build, ways of showing their understanding, build projects within Studio. Assessment Builder lets you build tests for yourself. We have pre-made tests, but sometimes you'd like to build your own tests. That's okay. At either a school, district, or teacher level, you can do that. You can monitor classroom progress in our service, but also within Google, Schoology, Canvas, any learning management platform you want to use, we incorporate and use nicely. We have single sign-on with all of those, plus many others. The green or teal section has professional learning supports. For you, it's with our educator network and our professional learning tab that I'll highlight. Recommended are resources that are being pulled up based on current events, whether it's looking at, learning how NASA uses Navajo language on Mars and name places, or whether we're highlighting women in STEM as part of National Women's History Month. The science textbook is where we're going to spend most of our time, but I do want to highlight just for a moment the channels, and channels I'll come back to a little bit later on, but they're curated content collections. And one particularly is the environmental science channel that we built specifically for the state of Virginia. So if you're teaching environmental science, it's hard to find resources. We built a channel specifically to fit your needs, so you have content that's readily available for you. Typically, though, channels are going to be resources that are broken down into specific areas. If I'm looking for interactives, virtual labs, activities around K-5, 6, 8, 9, 12, and pre-made lessons with those, we have those in one place in a channel. So channels are curated content collections for you. But let's dive into Science Textbook for a few moments. When you log in, you can choose your course. We do provide, I know our focus for us today is high school, but we provide kindergarten through high school content. I'm going to spend my time in biology, but you can choose and browse to any resource that you'd like to, or any concept. As Kelly mentioned, we are 100% aligned to your SOLs. We're built from the ground up for your SOLs, your 2018 standards of learning, not an alignment, not a crosswalk. It's all there for you, making it easy for you to do your job that you're looking to do day in and day out. We are organized by units and concepts. So as I'm navigating through, I can dive into any unit. I'm going to go into heredity for right now. And at the unit level, I have the standards that are being addressed within each individual concept. Those are your Virginia SOLs. I have pre-made assessments that I can use. And again, you can build your own, but sometimes it's easy and nice just to have one that's already in place for you. When I go into a concept, you can click on View Concept, and this will take you into the 5E instructional model that we utilize, which is recognized as the model inquiry approach to instruction. Now, within this, you're going to notice the text is here. It's written on grade level. So at a 9th grade reading level for our students, at other grade levels, it's written on their grade level. So, but for high school, it's 9th grade. And while we know that not all kids come in reading on grade level, we want to find ways to support all the learners, as Kelly mentioned. So I can come right here to where it says language and adjust from reading level A, which is on grade level, to reading level B, which drops at 200 Lexile points, or nearly 2 grade levels. We also have an authentic translation into Spanish that I can utilize. And whether I'm in English or Spanish or reading level A or B does not matter. I can have it read aloud for students who need that support, or they can have it read aloud themselves. And you may have noticed also that there's a lot of annotations already in our service, because as I modeled this for other districts, we've highlighted information, but students can actually annotate the book as they're moving through. And they have a notebook tool that tracks all of their notes. And so they can see any notes they've taken across not just this course, but any course, any grade level they've used throughout their time using Discovery Education Experience. You'll also notice key terms are in bold blue letters, and that's our academic vocabulary. We want to provide multiple entry points for students to understand the key vocabulary. So there's an animation showing visually what it represents. With text as well, there's a detailed definition like you would find in the back of a book with Greek and Latin etymology, video definitions, and imagery. So multiple entry points for students to understand that key vocabulary. And the detailed can actually be pulled out using Immersive Reader. And so in this case, students who may need the support, it can be read aloud for those students.
Chromosomes are the intercellular structures made of the cells.
I can adjust how fast or slow it reads. I can adjust male or female voice. And then I also have the ability to convert this into many other languages. Now I can do it by word if I need to. Maybe we're looking at someone who speaks Thai. I can just look at an individual word, hear it in English,
structures,
hear it in Thai, or I can convert the entire document that way, and it'll read aloud in that functionality as well. So multiple entry points to meet the needs of all the learners who come into your classroom day in and day out. You'll see opportunities for formative assessment at the bottom of each page. I'm in teacher mode, so I'm seeing teacher notes, but I can turn that off at any time and show my student view. And you'll see a variety of opportunities, whether it's drag and drop, open-ended questions, matching, all mirroring what you're seeing on your end of course testing right now. When a student finishes one of these, it will grade it for them and give you an immediate response that you can track all of your students' responses right here. And you can put that information can get into Google Classroom for your gradebook components as well. Navigating a little further in when you get into Explore, multiple pages of information, and that incorporates, graphs and diagrams, formulas, equations that you may be using at different courses, and interactives and dynamic videos. Now, if I want a video that helps to explain the Punnett square to my students, I have that. But what if I want to go a little deeper? What if I want to show how this is relevant to careers that may be available for students? Well, how are genetically engineered trees being utilized?
To keep moms from telling bad jokes, but they are getting to the root of how to create more desirable traits in many living things. The technology of genetic engineering is allowing them to manipulate or edit specific genes in the DNA of organisms, both plants and animals.
So we're looking at, someone asked a question earlier in the chat window, how do we address things like climate change and the ability to address climate change or maybe have a positive impact on climate change? We have videos showing students how they can have an impact in a future career around those areas. You'll also see interactive components, where in this case, we're going to be working with a Punnett square. I can choose different plant species, traits, allele pair setups, and now I can drag my allele pairs into the right area and do my match. Then match up my allele sets. And then it'll see what kind of monohybrid cross I'm going to have based on what I've done. I see what my results are. I can track what I've created from that, what my phenotypic ratio is. I can do monohybrid, dihybrid, and again, different species, different trait colors as well. As I go into the Explore section, you'll also see an Explore More Resources component, which has additional video resources, additional reading passages, interactive pieces, hands-on kit labs that are available for you, as well as assignments. Problem sets will be found in here for chemistry and physics folks. Certain biology components have them as well. The reading passages on a variety of reading levels and Lexile levels, and there's a lot of supports for students in those as well, where they can be read aloud. I can use a reading ruler if I need to track as I'm reading it for students, or I can make it into a dyslexic-friendly version of the font, making it accessible for any student in my classroom. The explain is where students can demonstrate their understanding by stating a claim and supporting that claim with evidence and reasoning. And they can do that in a variety of ways. They could do that through a video or image they've created. They can attach it from their cell phone or from any device they happen to be utilizing. We work on all devices, whether it's Chromebook, Mac, PC, cell phones, iOS, or Android. We even work on a PlayStation 4 or Xbox One. Your kids probably don't want to hear that, but we work on those devices. I also can have students do it in written format or use our tool called Studio. And there's an evaluation criteria that's going to let them know how they're going to be graded on this. Just a clickable rubric for you as a teacher. When I get into Elaborate with STEM, we're going to show you careers that are relevant to the topic. We've all had those students ask that question of why would I need to know this? Who would ever use this in the real world? Let's show you careers that are relevant to this topic. And then we have project starters between 2 and 4, depends on the concept, that have students actually apply this when we're looking at maybe genetically modified foods and how those are impacting us, or what things we can do to improve them as we move forward, and have project activities for students to complete around those. The evaluate includes a review for students and a student self-test that they can take anytime they need, as well as remedial tools in case they need to have a review of content. The assessment tab is never seen by students, but teachers see that, and they can assign those to students. Constructed responses, which are open-ended, as well as a summative assessment, and you can build your own assessments. Any of these pieces I should have mentioned earlier, whether I'm at a page here, I can assign it directly to Google Class, right from within the service, choose which classes get it, what assignment it's going to look like, how it's going to work, and I can have all those pieces in place. I also can print out any pages, save them as a PDF for offline access. All that capability is here. And videos have the ability to either be sent out through Google Classroom or Canvas or Clever or anything else, or they can be downloaded if students have internet concerns that they need to deal with. All of this information, whenever students complete any task, it's going to populate into your dashboard, so you can see all of your students, how they're performing at any point in time, by question, by topic, by concept. We break it down depending on how you set up your test or your assessment items it'll break it down that way. Green meaning they got it all right, red meaning they got it all wrong, yellow would mean partially right, and blue would be an open-ended question you would score yourself. All of this is supported with a model lesson that includes a detailed model lesson right here. The second sentence is always the provided model lesson gives you a very detailed model lesson in case you need it. It provides different pathways of guided and directed instruction models for you to support your needs. And in addition, in the model lesson in the teacher prep section, there are connections to student lives, filling in prior knowledge, and differentiation strategies for my struggling students, my ELL students, and my accelerated students. For most folks, that's a lot of resources to support a lot of student needs, but we go well beyond that. We provide you with access to what's called Discovery Education Experience. And what is that? That is a collection of resources, over nearly 250,000 additional resources, channels, videos, images, text, pre-made lessons and studio boards, interactives and audio files, aligned to all concepts. So every teacher in your building would have access to this. So support social studies teachers, your math teachers, your English language arts teacher, your students with special needs. Everybody has material, your guidance counselor with social and emotional learning needs. We provide you with a dynamic pre-made lessons in our studio tool that you can either use as they are or modify them and edit them if you'd like to make a copy of them and make some changes to them. And these have questions that students can answer directly on the service. And when they answer these questions, it gets populated directly into your dashboard for you to grade those simply and easily. You can have multiple choice, single answer, multiple answer, all that's there. All of that's supported with professional learning that Kelly's going to dive into deeper in a minute. But we have embedded professional learning supports within our service, showing how this works with Google Classroom, how you search for content, how you build lessons, and how you navigate our service, all in one location. Again, all within Discovery Education's content. So let me take just a minute to pass it back over to Kelly to bring us back to our PowerPoint. We do want to ask a couple of questions as we kind of finish up here. And what is one thing that you saw that you would love to share with somebody else? So if you don't mind, put that in the chat window. What's something that you saw you cannot wait to share with somebody else? And then Kelly, you want to wrap up with this last slide here?
I sure will. And Brad, I'll just say a couple questions. Hands-on labs came up. I think you touched on that, but maybe we'll just revisit that in the service if you want. Sure. Just talk more about how the hands-on lab and support. And there was a specific question, which I think Brady covered around science and engineering practices within the labs. I think you touched on those, but I'm happy to go back to that. But I'll just close with a couple of things. First of all, I hope that you saw the curated high-quality content aligned to both the old and the new SOLs. Built on that 5E framework, really that focus on the 5 C's and how important that is in Virginia. And then also the teacher lessons. There was a question about teacher support. Everything that you'll see in the model lesson is what I think about as that old wraparound teacher edition you used to have, but digitally. So anytime there needs to be updates or changes, we can push that all right into the service. Hands-on kits are available. If you're looking for hands-on, we can certainly work with the team to determine that. And then lots of STEM connections throughout that you'll see. So again, there's a hands-on lab and a virtual lab for every lesson. I think we have just a couple minutes left, so we'll certainly pause, take any questions. If anybody wants to come off mute while Brad, you maybe jump into a couple of the hands-on lab section.
Sure.
And show some of the support
so
that we've got.
Every time you go into any concept under Explore and Explore More Resources, you'll find your hands-on labs right here under the Teach section. You'll see hands-on activity, hands-on labs, all built out through here. So that's where you'll find all of your hands-on labs and all of your hands-on activities are under the Explore More Resources section. And what was the other one, Kelly, you mentioned?
Well, I think you touched on that when you were showing her the science and SEP within the labs, science engineering practices.
Yep, and they will be called out as well here in the teacher notes. You'll see practices called out. I just got to remember exactly which page. I think it's page 2. Oh, nope, it's going to be page 4. But they're going to be called out in one of your teacher notes. Your practices will be highlighted in there. So you'll have those right in service, not in teacher mode. That's why I'm not seeing my notes. I'll do it every time.
That's a great trick for anyone following at home. But that little button over on the side allows you to sort of toggle between teacher view and student view. So when you wonder what the student page looks like, it looks exactly like the teacher page, but doesn't have the teacher notes. Let's see. Michael, good question. We have just partnered with most of these folks in Virginia. So, I think the big key is professional learning and ensuring that teachers know how to recognize it and utilize it. We do have case studies in other states, specifically North Carolina. We've got it in a handful of other places where we have tracked longitudinal studies, and we've seen great increase in student scores, specifically in students with learning disabilities or students working below grade level. We've seen great gains. So Josh, I'll take that as a follow-up to send to you, and I'll trust that you can get that to Michael. Michael, I probably have some data in Virginia we can get you, but I would say that 90% of the state is going through this process right now. So we do have an older version of Science Tech book that we've got a handful of partners across the state using. But as far as this new Virginia Science Experience, this is pretty much year one of the adoption. I think Fairfax County adopted us for high school last year. And as you know, it's been a pretty tumultuous year. So I'm not sure that we've got great data to support really much of anything across any learning in the last year. But beyond that, we definitely have some folks that have been using Discovery Education for years, and we've got some data to back that up. So Michael, certainly reach out to Josh. I know he can connect you. But Josh, I'll share some of the case studies we've got so you can share that with Michael and anybody else who has other questions. That's a great question. Thank you for asking. Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly and Brad. Two things. One, I think Ms. Housey, Sandra Housey, was wanting a little more clarification on the kind of moving between English and Spanish with the tech book, and then also I think Principal Powell might appreciate you putting up the districts that you had that adopted, so he can kind of compare our demographics.
Happy to. Let me show the Spanish first, if that's okay, Josh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so within service, you can come right here where it says language, and you can adjust from Spanish here. And that's going to be an authentic translation to Spanish. Now, students can do that and teachers can do it. We also have the ability to interface with the Google Translate tool. So if you want to translate this into other languages, in addition to Spanish, we can translate and have read aloud in over 100 different languages if need be, if Spanish is not your only need out there. So, but Spanish will be an authentic. The other ones will be through a Google Translate. And then with regard to the other question, Josh, I'll pull up that slide again. So bear with me 1 second and I'll have it up there. All right. The other districts that are using us. And Kelly, I'm gonna let you handle this one.
Yeah, this is just a handful of them. We've got another probably, I don't know, I think everybody probably working in Virginia has had a busy week the last couple of weeks with a lot of districts coming on board. But these are all folks that are using Science Textbook in some capacity. I think Fairfax and Hopewell City. Hopewell probably has is much smaller, but maybe some similar demographics. A lot of high school usage there, and several of these have gone K-12. So we've got a good breadth of partners across the state. And then I think Patsy just wants to see a little bit more with the teacher view, and I think jumping into this science and engineering practices, a lot of that support is also going to be found in the model lesson. You'll find a lot of support on how it's really addressing really anything science related. But as you look into this teacher note, this is where you're going to find most of that, and you can just toggle with the click of a button. So Patsy, if you haven't seen what you're looking for and you want some help guiding it, we can certainly take some time to do that. If you do have access to the service, certainly take a peek and see if you can find it. But again, if you're having trouble finding it, we're more than happy. I know we're a couple minutes over our time, but it's all there for sure. So, other questions? I see Carlos, the interpreter's getting tired. I know he's had a long day. He's working hard. So Carlos, thank you. Yeah, I appreciate all of you guys and all of your questions.
Well, thank you, Brad and Kelly. I'm gonna grab screen back here just to put up a little Q&A graphic. And then if people have questions, you can either unmute, raise your hand and unmute, or just simply put them in the chat for any of our 4 finalists. If I can find my proper screen here. That's not it. Pardon me. Sharing information. There it is.
So, Mr. Bierman?
Yes.
So I have a question in the chat, but I would like for each one of our guests to be able to respond to how they plan on not just rolling out the innovation, but what is going to be the commitment to RPS with the implementation and rollout phases. And please be specific.
Sure, Josh, would you like me to take that first?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Discovery. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, sure. Michael, thank you. Great question. So first of all, I would say that from a professional learning standpoint, we do provide no-cost professional learning as part of the adoption. So that's something that we'll work out specifically through the negotiation process. But I would say specifically for every 1,000 students that you have, you get 4 days of professional learning. And so, you know, with a district your size, that's fairly significant. Our goal would be really to tailor those days however you need them. We've got a series of professional learning, 101, sort of college course style 101, and it gets more complicated and more complex. And it takes you from really just navigation and functionality to real pedagogy. You know, how do we engage students and inspire them in their learning? And how do we give teachers the support to teach science in the way that's really intended for it to be taught? Which maybe is a little bit different than we've been teaching science for years. And so the no-cost professional learning is a huge part of that. And again, as we work through the process with the folks in the central office, that would really be determined on how we would roll that out. But our key is to always tailor that to meet the needs of the district. I can be more.
And Kelly, you want to mention partner success?
We do have a dedicated team. Thank you, Brad. We do have a dedicated team that really supports you and walks you through it every step of the way. That includes single sign-on. It includes sort of all of the functionality that goes with coming on board with the partner. So thank you, Brad, for that. I know my colleagues from the other companies would love to take that one too.
Yep, I'll take that one from Amplify. So districts call on Sorry, that's okay. Districts call on Amplify to partner when they really seek transformation of what's going on in classrooms. And I know there's a lot of thinking here around, how do we really shift what science learning looks like for kids so that they feel differently about science and so that they excel when they're both tested in science as well as when they are using critical thinking in other subjects. And, Amplify we've come to understand that bringing transformation to the teachers in the district does not come from stating that teachers should change what they're doing and then attaching curriculum to that. It comes from practices that are embedded within a curriculum that aligns with the district's philosophy. And what we do in our professional development, which similarly to our colleagues from other companies is included in the way the program is sold, and it will all be a part of negotiation. We work alongside the districts and then inevitably work in classrooms to help teachers see how they can do things differently when the materials that they are working with are fully supportive of a different way of teaching. One quick example I would give you is that in all of the units in K-8 in Amplify Science, text is used differently than it's used in other programs. Text is not the primary vehicle for, quote, communicating content. Instead, teachers learn to help students turn to text as a source of evidence. And that begins in kindergarten when students start to access informational texts as reference materials, as a source of information beyond the classroom. So we find that particularly in elementary school, when teachers come to understand that teaching the use of informational text can happen within the science program, that becomes a great way for them to then integrate with the ELA instruction they're doing as well. And to see this as a whole set of processes that kids learn that are independent of subject matter and are about using evidence to support reasoning. So we work very closely with teachers and leaders along the way to make sure that happens.
Thank you, Josh. I'll address that for Savis, and thank you so much for the question. We really take professional development very serious, and we're appreciative, first of all, to have partnered with teachers in Richmond Public Schools, cross-curricular. We've also done shoulder-to-shoulder coaching in math in your schools, and we're very well versed in providing professional development, as we have partnered with probably almost every school division in the state. But specifically for this particular adoption, we would certainly offer our professional development that we call program activation, in which we would make sure every teacher is trained on how to implement the program. We would certainly sit down and work with the leadership at the district and talk about how that rollout in phases would go. So it wouldn't be a one-stop shop. In addition to that, we also provide our professional development virtually. We have the 24/7 online modules that are customized for Virginia and available for teachers at any time. So I believe that we have the supports and resources to make sure that Richmond would feel supported. In addition to that, as we get into the adoption phase, we will come back and do a research study to see how districts and school divisions and students are faring and working with the program as it relates to the SOLs. We also have a custom developed SOL we're waiting for the new blueprints so that our assessments in the program mirror exactly what students are being measured. So we'll be able to do that back map and then look at the data. So hopefully that gives a picture of the support, and as well as logistics. We do have a customer success manager that is based in Richmond, and she would work along with Mitch and the team on the ground to ensure that we get you set up and running.
Thank you. And I think accelerate. Yeah.
Yes, I'm going to keep it short. We really believe that the most important strategy that you can use is to support your teachers. The quality of instruction is going to have the most significant impact on student learning. So we're going to be there to partner with your teachers throughout the process. We'll look at your analytics to figure out where you need the support. And the other great thing is that Pam, as she mentioned before, comes to you having worked at the Math Science Innovation Center. So she has a lot of familiarity with your district, and she's going to be your go-to person located right in your area. So that's just a brief overview of what we do to support you.
Great, thank you so much. I'd like to address two questions that came in the chat, one from Ms. Rizzi and one from Mr. Strauss, and they're similar. I want to address Mr. Strauss first. The justification for the curriculum, specifically, if you recall from my presentation, and if not, I'll tell you, the justification is that the curriculum is a tool to help move science teaching in Richmond from a vocabulary forward strategy to a experience forward strategy where students actually are taking the load of learning on themselves, where students are having an opportunity to engage with a concept, to explore a concept before academic vocabulary is placed upon them, because science is in some cases like learning another language, and some of these words don't have reference or meaning to many of our students unless they're provided with those common experiences. This is not how science has traditionally been taught in Richmond, in Virginia, or in the United States, with the exception of those more outstanding classrooms. So in order to bring about this kind of change, a curriculum like any of the four that we heard about tonight will help make that process more expedient and will help provide our teachers with these tools to teach in this manner. And speaking about test scores, Ms. Rizzi, I was reluctant to even put that slide into my presentation. Honestly, obviously I am concerned about test scores and I'm concerned about our schools meeting accreditation, but my number one concern is that our students are getting the kind of equitable and meaningful science experience that we know that they deserve. And a lot of that comes from our teachers getting those resources. So Mr. Strauss, I talk to a lot of elementary school teachers, and I hear from many of them, especially in K-5, how they need more resources. They would like more resources. Many of them are not science specific people. They are more generalists, or they're literacy experts, math experts. There's far fewer people who are fully comfortable in teaching science content, especially at those early ages. And it's in those early ages where these skills are really firmed and developed. So to me, adopting a curriculum for all of our teachers will help to systemize this much more best practice approach to teaching science. I'm going to put my email into the chat. I love talking about this kind of stuff and would talk about it to anyone at length for long periods of time. Thank you so much to all of our finalists, and we hope that everyone will take the opportunity to go. I'm going to put the website one more time into the chat as well. If you get a chance to go there and jump into the curricula, see what they have to offer and leave your feedback, we would really appreciate it. Thank you so much to Mr. Hernandez for doing the interpreting. And we hope you have a good evening.
Thanks,
Thanks, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Take care, everyone. Stay safe.